The invitation. The ships appeared on a Tuesday morning, hanging in Earth's sky like silver teardrops frozen against the blue. 3 of them, each the size of a city block, casting shadows over New York, London, and Tokyo. They didn't attack, didn't demand surrender, didn't even try to communicate for the first 6 hours. They just waited. Marcus Chen was in his gym when the world changed. He'd been working with Sarah, a young fighter preparing for her first professional bout, when every screen in the building suddenly flickered to the same image. Those impossible ships suspended in defiance of everything humanity thought it knew about physics. "Coach, what are those?" Sarah asked, her voice small. Marcus wiped sweat from his forehead with a towel, his dark eyes studying the screens. At 42, he'd seen enough wars and conflicts to recognize a display of power when he saw one. "Something that's about to change everything," he said quietly. The aliens made contact at exactly noon, Greenwich Mean Time. The ships projected, a signal that somehow reached every communication device on Earth simultaneously. The image that appeared was of a being that looked vaguely humanoid, but stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Its voice, when it spoke, was translated into every human language at once. "People of Earth," the alien said, its tone formal but not unkind. "I am Ambassador Keth of the Galactic Combat League. Your species has been observed and found interesting. We extend to you an invitation to participate in the Grand Tournament, held every 10 cycles to determine the newest member of our galactic community." Marcus felt his blood chill. A tournament, to determine membership? That didn't sound like an invitation, that sounded like a test. The ambassador continued, "You have 7 of your days to decide. Choose your finest warrior. The tournament will test not just strength but intelligence, adaptability, and will. Many species have tried. Few have succeeded. Those who fail..." The alien paused. "Those who fail are deemed unworthy of galactic citizenship and are left to develop on their own timeline." The transmission cut out, leaving Earth in stunned silence. The next week was chaos. World leaders argued, scientists theorized, and military officials planned for every possible scenario. The debates raged on every news channel, in every government building, in every home. Some called it humanity's greatest opportunity. Others called it a trap. Marcus watched it all from his gym, training his fighters as if the world hadn't just been turned upside down. But inside, his tactical mind was working. He'd spent 15 years in military intelligence before retiring, to train fighters. He knew how to read a situation, and this situation screamed danger. On day 5, they came for him. General Patricia Williams arrived at his gym with 2 aides and an expression that mixed desperation with determination. Marcus had served under her command in Afghanistan, back when the world's problems seemed so much simpler. "Marcus," she said, not bothering with pleasantries, "we need to talk." They sat in his office while his fighters continued training outside, their voices and the sound of gloves hitting bags providing a familiar backdrop to an impossible conversation. "The president has made the decision," Williams said. "We're accepting the invitation." Marcus nodded slowly. "And you want me to fight?" "Not fight. Lead." Williams leaned forward. "Every analysis we've run comes to the same conclusion. This isn't just about sending our strongest person. They specifically mentioned intelligence and adaptability. You're the best tactical mind we have, and you understand combat from every angle. I'm not in my prime, General. I'm 42 years old. And you're still in better shape than most people half your age. More importantly, you can think on your feet. You can adapt, that's what we need." Marcus looked out at his gym, at the fighters he'd trained, the community he'd built. "What if I say no? Then we send someone else, and humanity probably loses its only chance to join a galactic community." William's voice was steady, but Marcus could hear the weight of the world in it. "The eggheads think this is a one-time offer. If we refuse or fail, we might never get another chance." 3 days later, Marcus found himself aboard a military transport, watching Earth shrink beneath him. The alien ships had provided coordinates to a massive space station at the edge of the solar system. As their shuttle approached, Marcus felt his breath catch. The station was enormous, a spinning wheel of metal and energy that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. Docking bays dotted its surface like open mouths, and lights moved along its hull in patterns that suggested a complexity beyond human understanding. "Holy shit," muttered Jenkins, the pilot. "Sorry, sir, but holy shit." Marcus couldn't disagree. The docking process was smooth, automated systems guiding their shuttle into a bay that seemed designed for ships much larger than theirs. As they disembarked, Marcus got his first look at the other participants. A creature that looked like a living mountain of rock and crystal stood near one wall, its surface glowing with internal light. Something that might have been a plant if plants could be 8 feet tall and move with predatory grace, swayed near the center of the bay. And in the shadows, Marcus caught a glimpse of something fast and sleek that vanished before he could focus on it. "Welcome, human," said a voice behind him. Marcus turned to find Ambassador Keth approaching, flanked by 2 smaller beings that looked like they were made of living metal. "I am surprised your species accepted," Keth continued. "Most primitive civilizations decline when they understand the stakes." "What exactly are the stakes?" Marcus asked. Keth's expression, if it could be called that, seemed amused. "Survival of your species' right to expand beyond your home system. The galaxy is vast, human, but space is not infinite. Resources are not unlimited. Only those who prove their worth earn the right to grow." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "And if we fail? Your species remains confined to your current system. Forever. No galactic trade, no advanced technology, no expansion. You will live and die on your single world while the rest of the galaxy moves forward without you." The weight of it hit Marcus like a physical blow. This wasn't just about joining a club. This was about humanity's entire future. "The tournament begins in 2 days, Keth said. "You will be given quarters and time to prepare. Study your opponents. If you wish, though I doubt it will help." The ambassador turned to leave, then paused. "Your species is young, human. Young and weak. But perhaps you will surprise us." As Keth walked away, Marcus looked around the docking bay again. Every other participant looked like they could tear him apart without effort. The rock creature alone probably weighed several tons. The plant thing moved with a fluid grace that suggested speed and power. And those were just the ones he could see clearly. But Marcus had spent his entire adult life facing impossible odds. In the military, in the ring, in life itself. And he'd learned one crucial lesson. It wasn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It was about being the smartest. He pulled out a small recording device and began making notes. Every opponent, every detail, every potential weakness or advantage. If humanity was going to survive this, he'd need every edge he could find. As he worked, he didn't notice the small insectoid creature watching him from across the bay, its compound eyes gleaming with what might have been interest or approval. The tournament was about to begin, and Earth's future hung in the balance. But Marcus Chen had never backed down from a fight, and he wasn't about to start now. The galaxy had invited humanity to compete. They were about to discover what humans could do when everything was on the line. First contact with the competition. Marcus spent his first night on the station in a room that was clearly designed for beings much larger than humans. The ceiling stretched 20 feet above him, and the bed was a platform that could have accommodated 3 people his size. Everything was clean, functional, and completely alien. He didn't sleep much. Instead, he used the time to study the information packet Keth had provided. The tournament consisted of 7 rounds, each designed to test different aspects of a species' capabilities. Physical combat was only one element. There were also tests of problem-solving, leadership, adaptation, and something called species essence that the translation software couldn't adequately explain. What worried Marcus most was the casualty rate. Of the last 50 species to attempt, the tournament only 12 had succeeded. The others had been sent home in defeat, their expansion rights permanently revoked. 3 species had suffered casualties so severe they'd never recovered enough to try again. A soft chime woke him from his restless half-sleep. The wall display showed an invitation to the orientation gathering. Apparently, all participants were expected to meet before the tournament began. Marcus dressed in his simple Earth clothes, cargo pants, a plain t-shirt, and comfortable boots, and made his way through corridors that seemed to shift and adapt as he walked. The station's technology was beyond anything he'd imagined, responding to his presence by adjusting lighting and even the texture of the walls. The gathering hall was vast, with a domed ceiling that displayed what looked like a real-time view of space outside. Dozens of beings filled the room, representing species from across the galaxy. Marcus paused in the doorway, taking it all in. The rock creature he'd seen earlier stood near the center, surrounded by several smaller beings that seemed to orbit it like moons. Its voice was deep and resonant, speaking in a language that sounded like grinding stone. The plant creature, he'd learned it was called a Verdani, swayed near a group of tall, thin beings with too many joints in their limbs. And there were others. So many others. A creature that looked like it was made of living shadow spoke, with something that resembled a giant insect. Beings of pure energy flickered and danced around more solid participants. Near the far wall, a group of warriors that looked like they'd stepped out of a medieval fantasy novel compared weapons with beings that appeared to be living machines. Marcus had never felt smaller or more out of place. You must be the human. He turned to find a being about his own height, with sleek gray skin and large dark eyes. It moved with a grace that suggested both intelligence and danger. I am, Marcus said carefully. And you are? Zara of the Kithal Collective. I've heard interesting things about your species. Her voice carried an accent he couldn't place, musical and precise. You're the youngest race to ever receive an invitation to the tournament. Is that good or bad? Zara's expression suggested amusement. Usually bad. Young species tend to be impulsive. They rely on strength and aggression rather than strategy. It rarely ends well. Marcus studied her carefully. The Kithal, if that's what she was, seemed more approachable than most of the other participants. What about your species? How many times have you competed? This is our third attempt, she said, and something in her voice suggested pain. We came close the last 2 times. Very close, but close isn't enough in the tournament. Before Marcus could respond, a new voice boomed across the hall. Attention, participants. The room fell silent as Ambassador Keth appeared on a raised platform, flanked by several other officials Marcus didn't recognize. The tournament will begin tomorrow with the trial of strength, Keth announced. Each participant will face a challenge designed to test their species' physical capabilities. Those who fail will be eliminated immediately. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. A test of strength didn't favor humans. Most of the beings in this room looked like they could bench press a small car. However, Keth continued, remember that strength takes many forms. Raw power is only one measure. Creativity, efficiency, and adaptation are equally valuable. That sounded more promising. Following the trial of strength, survivors will participate in the trial of mind, the trial of will, the trial of leadership, the trial of adaptation, the trial of essence, and finally, the grand challenge. Each trial will eliminate participants until only one remains. Keth's gaze swept across the room. Questions? A voice like grinding metal spoke up from the rock creature. What are the specific parameters of each trial? They will be revealed as the tournament progresses. Preparation for unknown challenges is part of the test. Another participant, one of the insectoid beings, clicked rapidly in what might have been its language. Keth nodded and responded in the same clicking sounds before translating. Keelak asks about combat to the death. The answer is no. This tournament tests worthiness for galactic citizenship, not gladiatorial skills. However, injuries are possible, and medical care will be provided according to each species' physiology. Marcus raised his hand. What happens to species that don't complete the tournament? Are they truly barred from the galaxy forever? Keth's attention focused on him, and Marcus felt like he was being evaluated by something far older and more intelligent than himself. The rules of the Galaxy Council are clear, Keth said. Species that fail the tournament are restricted to their home systems until they demonstrate significant evolution. For most species, this takes thousands of years. Some never manage it. The weight of that statement settled over Marcus like a cold blanket. Thousands of years. Humanity trapped in the solar system while the rest of the galaxy moved forward without them. "Any other questions?" Keth asked. When none came, he nodded. "Then rest well. Tomorrow we discover who among you has what it takes to join the galactic community." As the gathering dispersed, Marcus found himself walking alongside Zara. She seemed lost in thought, her large eyes distant. "Nervous?" he asked. "Terrified," she admitted. "My species' future depends on this, if I fail again." She shook her head. "What about you? You seem remarkably calm for someone whose entire species is at stake." Marcus considered that. "I've been in situations where people's lives depended on my decisions. I've learned that panic doesn't help anyone. Fear can be useful, but only if you don't let it control you." Zara stopped walking and looked at him with something that might have been respect. "That's very wise for such a young species." "Maybe that's our advantage," Marcus said. "We don't know enough to be properly terrified." They reached a junction where the corridor split. Zara turned to go one way, then paused. "Marcus," she said, "a word of advice. The tournament isn't just about individual performance. Watch how the other participants interact. Some of them have been here before, some have alliances, some have enemies. Understanding the social dynamics might be as important as understanding the challenges." "Why are you telling me this?" Zara was quiet for a moment. "Because in my studies of galactic history, I've learned that sometimes the species that survive aren't the strongest or the smartest. They're the ones that can bring out the best in others. There's something about humans, something that makes other species want to help you. I've seen the reports from your planet. The way you form connections, build communities, inspire loyalty. That might matter more than you think." With that, she walked away, leaving Marcus alone in the corridor. He made his way back to his quarters, mind racing. Tomorrow would bring the first trial, and he still had no idea what to expect. But Zara's words had given him something to think about. Maybe raw strength wasn't humanity's advantage. Maybe their real power lay in something else entirely. As he prepared for sleep, Marcus thought about his gym back on Earth, about the fighters he'd trained, the community he'd built. He thought about humanity's greatest achievements, not the wars they'd won or the enemies they'd defeated, but the times they'd come together to build something greater than themselves. The galaxy had invited humanity to compete, expecting them to fail like so many others before them. But they hadn't met humans like Marcus Chen. They hadn't seen what humanity could do when everything was on the line. Tomorrow, the tournament would begin. And Marcus was going to show them something they'd never seen before. The galaxy thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were about to learn they were wrong.